Okay, so my name is Al Fritz, and we're just in the middle of some aspects of universal design, so this would be chapter 2, and I'd like to challenge you to think again outside the box. Initially we were taking a look at infancy and early childhood and caregivers, whether it be parents of a child or an aged person, but I'd like you to try to guess what in fact this disability would be. And you might get upset with me for referencing as a disability, but I hope that by the time I'm done you're going to understand what this is all about. So here again, this person would have the same disability as the previous one and the same disability as this particular individual. Well, what is that? And that would be a cultural disconnect. Now this is an exceedingly important sign if you're in a culture where this sign is utilized every day. Boy, I don't know if you can make it out. I probably couldn't unless I knew, and of course I put together the slideshow, so I know quite well. But you know what? You could be in a building with this kind of a sign all over the place, and the state of the building could be this. So if a building's on fire and you're in an Oriental culture where that particular sign says exit or the way out, you would be very pleased to know. So you can well imagine that any of those individuals that I showed you previously would take a look at this sign and it would be equally obscure to them unless they happen to know the English language. And so there you see that we suddenly have a cultural disability. So when we're thinking about universal design, we're getting to be more and more of a global environment. We tend to travel the world. We have people come to us from all over the world. So anything that we can do that can alleviate those difficulties associated with cultural specific signage, we will do better, because now people can actually maneuver and utilize their environment without having to know exactly what that says. And so if you were in an environment from a foreign country and couldn't read that, by now this exit sign, which actually technically should be green and not red, would actually provide you with a clue about a way out of a burning building. Getting back to that initial one that I showed you, you can see the importance of knowing what this sign is in that culture. And so here we have a sign that says exit. Now interestingly, the universal design sign is green and not red. Here we now have a sign that actually speaks to the same concept. It has an open door. It's showing somebody fleeing in the direction of an open door. That could probably be more understood by more cultures of the world, therefore speaks better to universal design than any other sort of concept. But guess what? This sign is not compliant with our Alberta building codes, but yet it actually is a superior sign because it would cover off more races and more ethnic backgrounds. And so we're starting to get an idea of what universal design is all about. And you know what? Maybe we should be adding a sign such as this to the one that is code compliant. Maybe there are different ways in which to meet those requirements. Now, let's just get quickly into the concept of multiple languages. And here we have a very wordy sign when really all that really is required would be the symbol at the bottom to state the same thing, no smoking, right? Now here is a sign that is very important, and again, you can imagine if you were to step into a radioactive environment, it could be a matter of life and death. So it's important for cultures to begin to educate everybody in the context of what's going on about what that actually means. And so here we have a sign, and of course you need to guard your infants and children, because if they don't recognize that as a sign of something that is important, they could end up accidentally opening a container that they really shouldn't. Hopefully it's not in an environment that they could reach. But you can well imagine that this is something that needs to be understood by most cultures. Now the word is added in this environment for the English speaking, but in fact really the most important part of the sign is the one that speaks to universal design. Now here's one that is extremely important and probably very little known, and I present it so that you can start to think in terms of educating and also in terms of signage that is the most fitting for universal design. This sign here happens to mean biohazard. I don't know how many of viewers would have recognized that right off the bat. Maybe it's done in a way that somehow intuitively we know this isn't a door we should open. Hopefully it's done in a way that, you know what, if you're at risk to walk through that door, you should know it. And so it's a matter of educating, but then also developing universal systems that are recognized by all cultures. And here again, one that is quite strong, and maybe this one should have accompanied the other, the skull and crossbones. That's something that probably even a 5-year-old could understand without fully being aware. There'd be some trepidation with opening a door like that. And so there's a real relative importance of the threat or the risk associated with an environment and the kind of signage that you need. Again, when it comes to multicultures, when you're in a museum or something like that, it's important to have multiple languages presented, because guess what? Everybody that's traveling through that museum really kind of wants to know what's going on. These days in sophisticated museums, you can get a headset that will give it to you, a tour of the museum in your own language. These are all aspects of universal design that help you to maneuver through your environment and actually get some kind of enjoyment or use of that space effectively, regardless of your background. Now, the whole concept of new languages and the conundrum associated with it is not new. This is the Rosetta Stone, 3 different languages, and of course it's something that the cultures of the world have faced over many eons. And incidentally, Egyptian hieroglyphics were first understood in the context of knowing what these ancient languages were saying. Those languages hadn't gone lost, the Egyptian hieroglyphics had, and suddenly people could understand what those Egyptian hieroglyphics were stating. All right, so we're just going to break it off there and go to another chapter.